Breaking right now, a former Atlanta police officer accused of shooting and killing a man in a Wendy's parking lot has waived his first appearance in front of a judge. Garrett Rolfe is currently behind bars in the Gwinnett County Jail. He was transferred there last night after turning himself in at the Fulton County Jail. Nick Sturdivant is live outside of the Fulton County Courthouse in downtown Atlanta, where people are right now. And Nick, a lot of people were expecting him to waive his rights.
Yeah, good afternoon, Francesca. And again, as you mentioned, Rolfe did waive his first appearance, so that means that he's not expected to make an appearance, but his attorney may make an appearance via Zoom call. Again, as you mentioned, according to records, Rolfe is in the Gwinnett County Jail. He's charged with 11 counts, including felony murder in the death of Rayshard Brooks. If convicted of murder, Rolfe could face life in prison without parole. His attorney, Lance LaRusso, did not want to go on camera after Rolfe surrendered Thursday, but told us he believes the video speaks for itself and shows that his client was acting in self-defense after Brooks took an officer taser and pointed it at his client. However, District Attorney Paul Howard has said the prosecutors determined the officer's taser had been fired and no longer presented a threat. And right now we're trying to figure out what's next when it comes to this case and trying to speak with Rolfe's attorney. Francesca?